Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conquer the Clutter for what is it, the 13th or 14th? Help me there, phone. 13th or 14th of January. And we're going to be talking about, and I have to self-declare here, I wasn't familiar with the term scrupulosity. I received an email from someone, um, possibly somebody who attends the podcast. And I hope other people do that with topics. Send me an email. And they said, do you know anything about scrupulosity? And would you do a podcast on it? I find that it really trips me up. It gets in the way. And I thought, are we talking about perfectionism? Because that is a problem. Are we talking about OCD, because that is a problem. And maybe those elements play out to some degree. So I got a book, a recommended book on scrupulosity, and I'm going to take you through it. Now, I am almost exclusively today giving you the information verbatim from the author of this book. I do not claim to be an expert on the specifics of scrupulosity. And if I've understood the book, and I'm pretty trainable, around scrupulosity, it's coming from a different source. And it's probably made worse by if you happen to have any degree of OCD or OCPD or perfectionism. That probably doesn't help. All right, but we're just going to take you through it, and like I'm going to read what I've prepared. Then I want to open the floor. Now, if you I'm going to kind of give you a pre-warning, though. We are recording today. And so I'd like you to protect your identity if that's important, so that if you ask a question, your face isn't shown on the screen. Okay, so whatever you need to do, if protecting your identity is important to you, um, because that then will go on the website, um, do that now. Okay, all right. So these are just my thoughts as I understand it from this book. Okay, and I'll tell you the name of the book in a minute. So scrupulosity and its relationship to our day-to-day life, especially how it can impact hoarding behavior. Now, the author of the book didn't know anything about hoarding behavior, so that's an addition I'm making. And whether it's hoarding behavior, hoarding disorder, cluttering behavior, anywhere on that continuum, okay, I just want to credit the author of the book. I am working primarily from a book called, this is the name of it. Now, it's very specific. And so wait till the end of the podcast to decide if you want to order it or know more about it. All right, because it's very specific. All right. So the name of the book is Understanding Scrupulosity, and it's written by Thomas M. Santa, seasonal. Now, he's a priest, and as I read the book more and more, I began to see the interplay between, and he's pretty overt about it in the book, between religious and the other end of the continuum, our generalized or specific moral sense of obligation. But there's a strong religious piece to it, all right? And what appears to me to be a misguided application of our religious beliefs, our obligation to the actions, the faith we have, if we misguide that and we apply those standards, which were never meant to be about clutter, people, They were meant to be about a higher functioning at the cerebral and behavioral toward each other relationship. All right. They were never meant to be about something as functional, like as basic as our relationship to our things and our need for safety, mental health safety, physical health safety. So a misguided application to aim for just generalizing scrupulous behavior choices. Now, here's where we need to kind of draw a line a bit. So many people who live with some degree of OCD, all right, and the higher degree you live with it, maybe at some point, likely at some point, the term scrupulous would fit, but it's probably not, in most cases, related to religious underpinnings. All right. So, but they would affect behavior choices. So, generally, then, what is scrupulosity? So, it's defined as a habitual. That's important because it never leaves you. It's sort of like a tattoo, it's ingrained, a habitual state of mind that, because of an unreasonable, it goes to a level that you're not going to find hardly any people who can live up to this. All right. An unreasonable fear of sin-based misguidance, sin-based behaviors that now get applied to day-to-day life outside of anything that is involved with sin. And it inclines a person to judge. There's the biggie, to judge. All right. Certain thoughts or actions as reduced to either abhorrent. That's, you know what? That's too big. I don't care how badly hoarded your environment is. You are not abhorrent. It is not abhorrent. All right. When you understand it, it is understandable and it is undoable. It's not like something that is imprinted on you forever. This is a behavior. This is not your identity. This is not who you are. All right. And it's also thought under the term scrupulosity as having just to some degree a flavor of sinful. Right? Might even be extended to you are, if you don't make the right decision, the scrupulous decision, that you are morally right or you are morally wrong. That's way beyond. All right. And where I have seen this, and I can remember one situation I was working with, where the recycling became a moral issue for the person. We're talking moral issue. This is someone who took it, and I'm not judging. I just want to let you know how much, if you buy on for this and you don't challenge it and nip this level of excess in the bud, all right, you can end up down that line because there's no end to where does right and wrong start and stop, really? And this person who lived in the Ottawa area, in, I guess, that her geographical area, she was a major recycler. We had to do a whole wall in a kitchen, set up a system to make it possible for her to any degree match the inside drive and need to the outside output, all right, and completion. Some of that was a special section where she felt the need originally, not in the end, to drive anything in this section which was not recyclable in the Ottawa area to Toronto weekly. She didn't have family in Toronto to go and visit. This was a moral obligation to her. All right. Okay, for those people who live all over the world, and thank you for joining us. We love to have you. This is people, I've become kilometered. This is like 450 kilometers one way. That's 800-ish kind of kilometers, which is what, about 250 miles? People, anybody who knows the put it in the chat if you can. That's a long way. That's like
That's what it is.
Back and forth. Thank you, Claude. 400 miles round trip-ish. And that's just if you go straight to that spot and back. Can you see that that might be excessive? Okay. So it can be extended to moral or right or correct choices, but more importantly, obligations. A choice is a choice. When you have a choice, all right, you have, I'll do it, I won't do it. I'll do it to this degree, but not beyond. That's a choice. An obligation is something very different. I hope you can see where this continuum is going, all right? Even when those choices aren't necessarily sinful, incorrect, or even unwise, the perception is that the uncertain choice puzzling that person might be or has the potential to be, even at a basic level, a minimal level, gravely, it's a burden they carry. Wrong. Now, emphasis has to be placed on the assertion that our scruples, our set of chosen, actionable choices, okay? When you go to this degree, scrupulosity, involve an unreasonable level that creates fear of, and it may have, when you get to scrupulous or onerous, or it's a burden, or you carry it with you, it's not a choice you make. Well, it's somewhere on the continuum of good, not so good, and you live with it and you put it away and you get on with life. That's not what happens here. It sits with you. All right. You carry it. It is a burden and may have its foundation in the fear of sin. Now, the author of this book was a priest, so that is not something that is outside of his purview, all right, of interpreting. If a person simply makes a mistake and thinks the action is wrong, but it isn't actually wrong. There's no cutoff point that made it wrong versus right. They're not necessarily scrupulous, all right? However, when they become scrupulous, it involves an emotional condition internally that interferes with the healthy working of the person's mind, all right? And it produces a judgment not in accordance with any verifiable objective truth. Instead, it's connected with the emotion of fear. So, you might reasonably ask, how can a person be sure that they're not being scrupulous? Well, my dictation right now says, well, Santa says, we're not talking about the same Santa. We're talking about the author Santa. Well, Santa offers that scrupulosity has been termed the doubting disease. Can you imagine going through your day-to-day life every day, doubting your decisions and carrying with you on your back inside the cost, the insecurity, the blame, the fault? In short, people who suffer from scrupulosity are people who find it difficult to trust their own ability to make decisions. Now, don't panic. if you happen to be somewhere down at the beginning, until you get used to something, when you've normalized clutter, even though you didn't accept it, you just built it and you lived with it and you protected yourself from it. And then you opened up your eyes and now you don't like it and you are holding yourself responsible. All right. There's a point at which in that process you don't trust your ability to make decisions. When you're looking at, do I keep it? Do I not keep it? Of course, you're in that phase of, is this the right decision? Is this not the right decision? And until you have a process and you get validated to support the process that will work for you so that you can make, I can live with it decisions. All right. Yeah, it's regrettable. Yeah, I wish I didn't have to make that decision. But you know what? I'm okay with it because by making that decision, I have this much more that's more important to me, equally important to me for making that decision. And so I'm okay with it. All right. The inability to trust one's own decision means that you are constantly examining your motives, your thoughts, your feelings, and anything else that might come into focus during that decision-making process. And we are every day facing having to make decisions, right? I don't know about you, but I do. If a person who is scrupulous is in fact a person who doubts their own ability to make decisions, they need to ask themselves if that doubt is coming from some form of moral judgment, moral requirement, and where that requirement was founded. Where did that come from? That it preempts my right of choice? And is it still reasonably applicable in every cotton picking situation I'm facing? There's a right, there's a wrong. No, there isn't. And in the circumstances facing you every day, that experience of anxiety, if you allow yourself to be in a scrupulosity mindset, anxiety is created every time you're in the act of making a decision and then following up by trusting that decision and acting on it. Can you see where you'd be spinning in place for a very long time? Right? How would you ever get anything done? How would you ever let yourself out of jail? People who suffer from scrupulosity might sometimes wonder if they're actually scrupulous, all right? Just as they sometimes wonder if things are serious, all right? And whether they are, whether they aren't, what is the potential repercussion? And the safest zone that people who live in an element of scrupulosity is to overestimate the damage done by making the decision that works for you today, or overestimating the loss as a result of this, what remains a questionable decision. Every decision we make is questionable. So Thomas Santa asked, how does a person know if they really are scrupulous or not? Now, for this, he goes to the definition, a good place to go. Okay, and the definition of scruple is as a very small, so the actual definition of scruple, which is where this behavior don't go zone is a very small quantity or ancient Roman weight equal to 1 times 24th of an ounce. So it's tiny, all right? Now, we're getting very specific here. Is scrupulosity just never ending, all right? Or is it a feeling of just temporary hesitancy? You're not sure. Well, that you're not sure is a normal thing. Staying stuck in not sure and applying a moral condition to it or a moral standard, not good. All right. Is it just a feeling of doubt? We all have that. Uneasiness. Okay. I don't know very many decisions that we're not sort of like, that's uneasiness. All right. But is it arising from a difficulty in decision what is right, wrong, proper, ethical? By the time we're going to proper and ethical, people were out there on the ledge unnecessarily. Okay. So this podcast, okay, can build on that because we all have to make uncertain decisions every day. The final third option for definition is because the uncertainty results in a feeling of qualm, which is kind of like a sickly feeling or misgiving about something one thinks might possibly be wrong. The adjective scrupulous is defined as having or showing scruples. Really? About clutter? Scruples? Okay. And it's characterized by careful attention. That might be a little much. To what is right or proper. There are right decisions. There are unfortunate decisions. All right. There are not proper decisions. Okay. Conscientiously honest or demanding or characterized by precision. Can you see you are way too out there from just the weight, the responsibility? It's not a moral thing. It's not a precise thing. It's a can you live with it decision. It's a does it work for you today moving forward? It may have been the perfect decision in the past, but are you living in the past? Do you want to stay in the past? Does it work for you and serve you now today? Is it you moving forward or is it you who you used to be? Watch yourself if you start to apply a level of exactness. There's only one right answer. That's not true. There are probably 6 good answers to any problem. Can people see where we're headed here? We're headed out on a cliff. All right. When we distance ourselves from religious scrupulosity, we go, okay, in our faith relationship with our God or our religion or our temple or whatever that is for you, okay, we can have spiritual beliefs that are part of ourself. And we do need to work to be at peace with those. All right. But when we turn it into a psychological state of anxiety and fear about being wrong and making mistakes, and then making ourselves accept ownership of those mistakes, what we feel heavily causes the person to question much of what they do. Can you imagine that person just spinning, picking it up, looking, not being sure, putting it down? Everything is later, later, later. You can see the impact of making a faith-based, religious-based part of who we are. All right. Our psychological functioning, our mental health, you can see that the impact this will have on our ability to act and to take a risk of being right when we're not sure or right enough, being even marginally wrong when we get stuck in that spinning. All right. Wrong in making decisions. Sometimes I make wrong decisions, and sometimes you're going to make wrong decisions. All right. And we're going to survive. I can't tell you how many times. Okay. I have looked at something and thought, I've had you forever, not forever, but I've had you for it. no, I haven't used you in so long. I don't remember the last time. And I'm going through this area of my environment. You know what? I think it's time to let you go. And 2 weeks later, all right, that's what you need. Well, I've learned to laugh at that because it didn't change my life. I almost, almost always had something else that wasn't specifically intended for that, but it worked just fine. All right. There, don't allow yourself to get into an immobilized, dreaded fear, all right, that you might be making a questionable decision, all right, or that you might have offended or transgressed a rule. And that rule is an obligation that you feel 110% committed to. You see that this can become part of everyday life if you don't nip it in the bud. It can also be a living torment. So the question perhaps could be an additional check-in with yourself when feeling uncertainty, asking oneself, really, okay, what is this about? What is this extra need for precision and surety? What is that about? What else am I not feeling good about? Why am I, maybe I'm just generally, all right, in a not my clearest frame of mind. So check in with the feeling of uncertainty and ask yourself, is this degree of precision unnecessarily strict? Really, what really is going to change? And it isn't a matter of I can get away with it. It's about really what is going to change. Is it unnecessarily strict when you measure the benefit of loss? A question, all right? When you measure what is the benefit or loss of what you're trying to decide? And I boil it down to today moving forward with what I know. I always add that with what I know, all right? Do I suffer a loss that I don't want to pay by letting this go? Or keeping this? Keeping it can be a loss too. Or do I benefit? What gives me more? What serves me and the people I'm responsible for more? Okay, it's important to realize that the exercise of freedom of will, and that's part of most faiths as well, can be limited by many influences, and scrupulosity is certainly one of them. It needs to be said that individuals who don't insist on certain things because they consider themselves better than others, it's more that these obsessions and compulsions for precision, individuals who are living with some degree and applying some degree of OCD, applying some degree of perfectionism. Get Jane Birka's book if you're living with an interruptive degree of precision. All right? Compulsions for precision and certainty. They plague themselves. All right? And if I can give you one place to start getting past that in a healthy way, that is get the book Procrastination. You sit down and you read it from cover to cover and you ask yourself on every line, is that who I am? Because that is a marvelous book that will help you guide yourself out of this trap you find yourself in. All right. Because if this is a false level of certainty and obligation, then it's time you rid yourself of this obligation. It was never true. It's just true in your over anxious mind. This tyrant of obligation. If you could, scrupulous people who find themselves possessed by multiple frightening, challenging doubts every day in day-to-day life are less likely to stop and ask themselves. So if you are not stopping yourself and asking yourself, Could a little of this certainty possibly be helpful? All right. And sometimes it can be. In one sense, questioning could actually be a good sign because it might indicate that the person is arriving at a point in their personal development where they may be willing to try the initial steps toward recovery simply by asking the question, how really urgent is some kind of extreme correct choice that I'm not certain works in my life? All right, but I'm afraid not to. That might be a good starting point. Then sit down and read Jane Berke's book, Procrastination, and the perfectionism chapter. However, in yet another way, it's a question that reflects the truth about the complexity, all right, of the scrupulosity affliction. There's no way out of it. It's that complex. It's like being in a maze, and clearly reveals the multiple layers of doubt and anxiety that as a person you are living with unnecessarily. It's not a safe place to be. There are so few things in this world that matter to that degree. The chance that they happen every day is slim and none. Can you get over scrupulosity? For some people, being able to manage their lives without excessive worry would be a real relief. For others, acquiring a certain sense of peace, even while the uncertainty of the decisions you make kind of roil a bit of a storm around you. It all gives evidence that they might have received many special insights while they are engaged in that struggle. Right? And that's a good thing sometimes. Not every moment of every day with every decision, that's too much. And for some, being scrupulous, it seems to have only been a temporary, maybe painful period that they had to go through, but one that is now under control. You can work your way with support out of this. So the next question is, how did the people who found their way out of this maze of never-ending obligation and uncertainty, how did they find their way out of there? How can a person who suffers from scrupulosity recover? Act simply, this is a hard one, act against the impulse for scrupulosity. Take the opposite action. Take it in small baby chunks to begin. All right, we don't want anybody hyperventilating here. This means that we choose because we always have free choice. When faced with a question or a doubt or anxiety about a choice or a decision that we've made, that we try not to give in to the doubt or the question. Because we know more often than not, we're struggling with something that is on that continuum of scrupulosity, and we don't want to find ourselves down at the edge of the cliff. All right. One of the manifestations of growing scrupulosity is that we are overwhelmed with too many questions and anxieties. If we direct our attention from a particular question or anxiety, as soon as we've answered that particular concern, immediately another question. There's the next one. There's the next one. There's the next one. It's unrelenting. Another question or anxiety just takes its place. When we act to the contrary, I would suggest acting to the contrary might look like something a little safer, and that is this choice right now in front of me? What choice in front of me that I'm facing is who I am today moving forward? Even baby steps moving forward. We're not talking, what the end result is going to be. All right, just today. Or is it who I used to be? When we act contrary to the impulse, we choose not to give any more attention. We will habituate not giving any more attention to the question facing us that probably doesn't have a good answer. Certainly, it doesn't have a correct or right answer. And in part, we start to steel ourselves for the onslaught of the next question that will bombard us. We're ready for it. Because that next question bombarding us is calling out for attention. It's like a spoiled child, but we refuse to give them any more of our attention. All right. Sometimes, now this is a joke, but I actually sometimes do this. All right. If I've got, oh, na, 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 na. What do I feel right now is the right thing? Just do whatever silly thing you need to do to make yourself laugh. Laughter. You can't laugh when you're afraid of something. And the thing you're looking at can't make you afraid to the degree it will immobilize you if you can find some way to laugh about it. Laughter is healing. Okay. And it's a good way to refuse to give whatever is challenging you too much, any more of our attention. This is something that needs to be done again and again to habituate it. Okay. It's one of the things that has sort of over the years, many years, made me start to verbalize externally out, hear myself rationalize and work through the reasoning of things. And then I've included what I discovered for me. As long as you're not on a bus with somebody, one of the things that really adds is all of your other senses. All of the other parts of yourself are listening. When you say, okay, but if that is true, then this is true. And that's not, that end point doesn't suit me. It doesn't feel like that's the direction I want to go in. So what does that mean? If I didn't do this, if I did something else instead, what are my options? And then I brainstorm, like right out loud. Okay, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. This one feels like I'm taking a step forward in a direction that I believe more in. I'm more sure about it. And so I'm going to go there. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to see how things are working out. Rome wasn't built in a day. All right. It has to be done again and again. And it is most for sure not the one-time effort. All right. You're not going to solve this by just making a contradictory decision. But it does get easier each time. Each time we choose to act against the impulse, we can start accepting the fact that it will be, things will change is initially difficult. That's normal. It's uncomfortable, but it's normal. This strategy serves as a caution and a warning period. When we act against our fears and our anxieties, we are going to initially become more fearful and a little more anxious. All right. The doubts and the questions will at first seem even more powerful. When I stood before that 75-foot Burmese python, all right, and I decided with a squeaky little voice, because I wanted my grandson not to be afraid of snakes, to put my hand up, to be able to go and have this thing sort of logged on me. All right. I had to really do this. And you know what? At 77 years of age, it's one of the things I am the proudest that I did, because I had said to myself earlier in my life, I will not go through my whole life afraid of snakes, not to the degree I am. I will not do that. All right. Someday there will be a day that I face this fear down, and I know that day is coming. So, what is it that you are trying to face? So, the doubts and the questions will at first seem even more powerful. more demanding of our attention. This is a powerful moment because it means that we are deliberately beginning the process of healing. Nevertheless, it's still painful and disruptive. I can't tell you the 2.5, 3 hours before that Burmese python got draped on me. I can't tell you the stages, we don't have time, that I went through, the work, internal work I was doing, the self-talk, the this and that, all right, to be able to put my hand up, okay? And I didn't put it up high, I have to tell you, it's just a little, okay, me. All right, just before he puts the snake back in the box, no, today's the day. Today's the day. But it has to be faced in order to begin healing. So the next question would be, where do you get encouragement from? I got encouragement from about 25 6-year-olds who had a Burmese python laid in their lap. Now, it was a well-fed Burmese python, all right? And my grandson getting up there, a little squirt, okay, no bigger than a minute. And the Burmese python, he held the Burmese, and he was so proud that I thought, you know what? I want to be like that kid. I know I'm a whole lot older. I want to be like that kid. I want to be brave. Okay, today's the day. If he can do it, I can do it. I won't go through. Now, do I love snakes today? No, I don't. But I'm not terrified of them. I face the fear. Where do you get the encouragement from? And that's a question that each of us has to ask, because every day, every single day has challenges and setbacks. Could it be as simple as reading or listening to something every day that gives you hope? And if it gives you hope, hope will always widen your perspective. It will always give you a different hormonal rush. Let your body, let your system work for you by giving you that positive, different hormonal rush. And that will help you recognize the part of life in every day where we need to make choices, choices that we can't be certain of. And you start to focus then on and limit yourself to what are the actual possibilities today. Not some vague moral obligation, the sky is going to open up, you're going to get hit by lightning. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but it feels that way, like there's going to be some repercussion, and it's inside you, and you can't give it away or distance yourself from it. What are the actual possibilities today in our life, our own life, available in our environment? Another option is to imagine the future, when you will no longer be scrupulous. What will it be like? What will you be like? What will be the same? Think some things will be the same. What will be different? How do you start? What one or two initial steps do you know you can take? Because you already have the wherewithal to do that. They may not be big. Taking those steps forward to get that tyrant off your back. One way is to face the dichotomy, the contradiction, that nothing is all good or all bad. All right? Is it better to undertake with whatever effort, in this case, facing you? And I told you the story of the recycling, for instance, and forming a manageable plan that deals today with the part you can deal with, and then chunking down that plan until you're capable of what you really want. All right. When you feel that you have a choice and that the whole world isn't going to change and neither are you, you'll be more optimal. You'll be more optimal. You will give yourself more latitude. Okay. Because it can be a tyranny to our energy, to our focus, to the space, all of these obligations, all of these possibilities, all of these right or not so right decisions they all occupy space. Okay. But was your life meant to be in storage? Is that how your life is going to play out? Where is the time, space, free will, mental space? If your spaces where your life is supposed to happen are being occupied by things. If you feel that you've transgressed something, what do you need to do to make restitution? Not to anybody else, but to yourself. Okay? A sufferer in Georgia, I just wanted to let you know, offered when I was becoming, she said, when I was becoming obsessed with an unhealthy thought, this isn't me, this is this person in Georgia. When I have the ability to recognize my thinking is off base, there's something wrong here. It doesn't have to be a big thought or profound. I now simply say, I'm dwelling on this. I need to help myself not to dwell. I need to help myself to do something actively that is doable and even to a small degree solvable. And this gives me peace of mind and it reminds me I have choices. All right. It gives me peace of mind and it helps me to redirect my thoughts. So, what do you need to do when the uncertainty takes over? What do you need to do?
Can you do it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.